Hi everyone, it's Lewis here. I want to talk to you about a film like I normally do. I'm going to talk about Air with no spoilers, but I mean, you can't really spoil it, but we'll get into that. It's a new film directed by and starring Ben Affleck and his friend Matt Damon and Jason Bateman and Chris Tucker and some others. Yeah, it is a film about Nike, or Nike as they're actually called. I know they're called Nike. I've known that for a long time. I know that because they call them that in the film. Um, but I've just always said Nike, so I'm going to say Nike just because it's easier. But yeah, anyway, it is Nike, definitely. But yeah, it's a film about them and them acquiring Michael Jordan, the sponsorship deal for the Air Jordans, which is, the thing that made them from a big company to a huge company. And I think whenever I've spoken to people about this film this week, it seems to have a lot of buzz around it, a lot of goodwill towards it as well, which is very important for a film. And people go, "Oh yeah, the Michael Jordan film," and I kind of go, "It's not." This was before I watched the film. I was like, "It's not really a Michael Jordan film. Like he's part of it, and he's obviously the goal of the film is them trying to get Michael Jordan, but it's not a film about him. Again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but he's not a character in this film. Like he's an important part of this film, but at no point is there like, is it Michael Jordan? Like, is it about him kind of thing? It's in that sense. So yeah, it's not like Michael Jordan's life story. It's not really the story of Nike either, because it's that there's a lot that went on with that company before this and after this. This is just kind of one of the big points in their history, and probably one of the biggest points as the film makes in sports and endorsements and athletes and deals and that kind of thing. And one thing before I go on, I did want to mention this book by Phil Knight, who is the character that Ben Affleck plays in the film, the founder or one of the founders of Nike, called Shoe Dog, and it's a really really good book. I haven't read it for a number of years, but I'm definitely going to read it again now. But it's one of my favourite books, definitely, that I've read in recent years, and it's just his life story. Also, this will make a really good movie. I'll come back to that. Yeah, if you haven't read it, I would suggest it. I get no money for recommending this, obviously, but help out billionaire Phil Knight if you can. Really good book. They should make that into a movie as well. Saying that, it's yeah. I don't know. It's one of those things where I will watch this and I'm like, man, I really would just like a whole film about the history of the company about this. And I thought, actually, maybe not. Maybe just less is more in this sense. Sometimes when you try and make a great person's life into a movie, it doesn't quite work because you can't really condense a whole life into like a 2 hour movie, because then you just kind of you miss out bits. So I quite like the idea of this is the intersection of the company and a great athlete like Michael Jordan, and it's just a specific part of their lives kind of thing. So rather than trying to fit it all in, rather than doing a whole film about either of them, it's just kind of like, I prefer that in like a biopic style film, or a real life based film where it's a story about a time in their life rather than their whole lives. But yeah, I think this is a very enjoyable film. I found it really engaging. There was no point where I was, kind of lost my interest or anything like that. I think, again, it kind of lacks a bit of tension because you know what's going to happen, unless maybe if you're born after the 2000s and you don't really know who Michael Jordan is. But I always say to people who weren't alive then that the 90s was Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson, and Bart Simpson. You couldn't turn anywhere without seeing one of those people on something. And one of those people isn't even real, Michael Jackson. But yeah, it's one of those things. He was such a big cultural icon, Michael Jordan. So, but if you don't know anything about him, then this film may be a bit of a surprise to you. But even if you do, it's quite an interesting little 80s flashback as well, because this is set in 1984. But anyone who was alive in the 80s and 90s knows who Michael Jordan is. I think the strongest point of it is definitely the performances. I really like them. I like them all, in fact. I think Ben Affleck is really good as Phil Knight, because he's only really kind of a supporting character in this, but Phil Knight's quite an odd, eccentric man who loves running and Buddhism and meditation and stuff like that, and they really capture him really well, and Ben Affleck looks quite a bit like him in his younger days as well, the way they've done his hair and that sort of thing. So he was a real highlight. Matt Damon's really good. He plays kind of like a schlubby kind of guy who's, always running around trying to get all this sorted. And I don't think Matt Damon's actual physique is like it is in the film, because he's not, he's not massively overweight or anything. He just looks like, a normal guy that doesn't exercise or look after himself as such. And like it's a physical thing as well, like the way he kind of carries himself in the film. Even like I feel like it's quite a physical thing where he's just kind of, he's just kind of like that all the time. Like his shoulders are a bit slumped and that. I'm sure Matt Damon probably doesn't carry himself like that. And So some really good, obviously, appearances from Chris Tucker and Viola Davis as Michael Jordan's mum as well. I think that was a condition for Michael Jordan because they wanted to get his blessing for the film, and he said that he wanted Viola Davis to play his mum, which is a good shout. You might as well ask for that. But yeah, I think that was Jason Bateman as well is really good form on this. It was one of those where I kind of forgot these are all really famous actors, really well known actors. I've seen in many things, but I kind of forgot who they were. I just saw them as the characters. Towards the end of the film, I was like, oh yeah, that's Jason Bateman, isn't it? Even though he doesn't look any different. He's just he's just playing the character so well. I forgot it was acting, and I guess that is acting. I found it interesting that the film was a 15 rating as well because of the language. That's the only thing in it that gives it a 15 rating. And there's probably only really one scene with the actor. I think his name's Chris Messina. I'm not really familiar with him, but he was really good in this as well. He plays like Michael Jordan's agent. And there's one scene with an excessive amount of bad language, which was very, very funny. And I feel like it's probably just that one scene that's really tipped it over. But I appreciate they kept that in and didn't kind of, cut anything down to sneak in with a 12A rating. But I mean, that wouldn't really be necessary because this film, I think, is and definitely engineered towards adults, and just kind of like it's not necessarily one that a kid would probably be that interested in seeing. It's quite an adult film, but also quite just an enjoyable film, really. The only negative part for me was I had to see in a different cinema to usual because my one was too busy on a bank holiday and I wouldn't be able to park, so I had to go to a different one. And there was a guy in my row who kept looking at his phone all the way through, really annoying. The sound wasn't as good as my normal cinema, and also the exit light, the fire exit light, was just way too bright. So the whole film, I just had that in my face. It was really annoying. I wasn't next to it; it was on the other side of the room. But yeah, that's not the film's fault, so I'll let him off for that. I don't blame you for that, Ben Affleck, if you're watching, Ben Affleck. But yeah, overall, I think if this bank holiday weekend, if you're over here, I think if you're looking for just a good time at the movies, then I recommend checking it out. It's a very enjoyable, very easy to watch film, I think. And like I say, you kind of know what's going to happen, but it's I think there's a similar quote in the film where it's like it's not the finish line, it's the journey or something like that. I don't know, I can't remember. I watched it a few hours ago. But yeah, anyway, that's my review of Air. Did I say the title earlier? Can't remember if I did. I think I did. But yeah, anyway, yeah, leave a like. Thank you very much. Air.